So the shop counter is now complete. Once that had dried, I gave it a really good sand, actually using 240 grade sandpaper, and then I took it outside to brush off the dust. And whilst I was doing that, I just knocked a little bit of the wood on the side there, and I thought, well, I'll touch that up. But then I thought, well, shop counters normally do look a little bit battered, don't they? So I'm actually going to leave that as a bit of sort of wear and tear, and also where I've sanded a little bit harshly along the bottom there, and some of the paint has sort of come off and gone back to wood. I'm going to leave that as well, but that's obviously down to your sort of personal choice, whether you like things to look fresh and new or a little bit sort of worn. And I'm now going to pop this into place. So excuse all of the mess here on my work surfaces. I've got lots of projects on the go at the moment. So I'm not going to dress the shop counter in this episode, I think I've already said that, but I'm really looking forward to dressing that, and we'll cram as many things as we can on these two large shelves. And the thing I have already got, I'm going to have to put the camera down and just go and find the little box that I keep all the bits in, so one moment. It's just this little sellotape dispenser, and you may have seen the YouTube tutorial that I did, and I made a couple of these, one in blue for the shop and a pink one for my own doll's house craft room, and I'm going to have that under there. And I also made a couple of little spare rolls of sellotape, so we can have one of those as well under the counter. And just really looking forward to making some little bags. We'll have some tissue paper on the counter. We'll do some of those lovely paper bags with string handles with tissue paper poking out, and we can have a few sort of set up on the counter ready for the purchases. And we'll do a little desk tidy so they can keep all the pens and everything in. Maybe have a little clipboard with some sheets on for stock taking, all that sort of thing. I'm trying to cast my mind back to when I worked in a shop and try and remember what we used to keep under the counter. We would have kept dusters and a glass cleaner and polish to go round when the shop was empty and have a clean. So all things like that, and I'm really looking forward to doing that. I love doing all displays where there's lots of little bits included. But that's the first thing there, and what I'll do is I'll share that tutorial here in the other little bits and pieces tag, so you can find that in there a bit easier than scrolling through the YouTube videos. But that was that, and then I want to have a go now at making those loose doors with the wire meshing, which we're going to display up here near this fire surround, or even on top of it actually. So to make the little frames, I'm using 3 by 3 strip, that's 1/8 of an inch, and then I've cut the sides here 76mm long, and that's 3 inches, and then these horizontal supports I've cut 32mm long, and that's 1 1/4 inches. And then these central bits work out at about 21.5mm long, and that is 13/16 of an inch or thereabouts. But these pieces, it will depend. If your 3 by 3 strip is just slightly thicker than 3mm or than 1/8 of an inch, then that will affect the size of these pieces. So what we'll do is, as we go along, we'll measure, and then when we get to the bottom one, we may need to take a little bit off, but begin by cutting them at that 21.5mm. And also the glue can also add a little bit of length when you're attaching strips like this. So we'll sort of work that out as we go along. Okay, so let's get these glued together. I'm keeping my eye on that patch of sun. And if it starts moving down and in our way, then I'll draw the blind. But at the moment, it's sort of okay. It's sort of bright out there today, quite nice, although the cloud does keep going over, but I'll keep my eye on that. So when you've cut your strip wood, and I did these with my mitre block and saw, if you've got any of these little fluffy ends, then use your craft knife to trim them off rather than sanding, because that way you sort of take away from the length. And just go along and trim them. And that way you're just removing those little extra bits and not touching the actual strip. Okay, and then what we're going to do is begin by marking up those horizontal supports, and we're just going to put a little pencil mark in the centre of each one, and then that will help when we're putting those little vertical strips into place. So do it so it's going across the whole piece as well, and always use your rule to make the pencil mark and not the piece that you've just marked up. That way you keep a more accurate measurement. Okay, so begin by applying glue to the first horizontal strip and attach it to the top of the side one, like that. And then take one of the shorter strips, and we're going to sit this centrally below that pencil mark. Now if you're not very good at measuring by eye, then you can put a little pencil mark in the centre at each end of these strips and then line them up. But I'm just going to do it by eye. So push it into place like that. Again, use the lines on your cutting mat to make sure that everything's staying straight. I'll put that so that it's centrally like that. So I'm working down that central line, and then just put a little bit of glue on the bottom of there. And then your next horizontal strip. So we're just sort of building it up as we go down. Again, get that lined up in the centre of the vertical strip, and then push it against the side. Like that. And again, you're really just going by eye to make sure that you're sort of straight from there to there. So you've got sort of little equal panes, I suppose. And then the next one. In fact, I'll put a little bit of glue on the end of each of these, or on each end, sorry. And then pop that one in. And again, this is another of those little projects where it doesn't have to be precise. If we were sort of making maybe a door for a cabinet with panes in it, then we would obviously make all of the little measurements and make sure it was exact. But when you're doing things like this, well, when I am, I tend to think it doesn't have to be as precise as if it was a piece of furniture. It's just really a sort of little novelty item. But you might think that you want it to be exact, so you can go through and make your measurements on each of the little strips. But I actually quite like things when they look a little bit rusticy. You saw then I just pulled the whole thing apart. It's because I'm not letting the glue dry in between. So sort of push it all together as you go along. And what we're actually going to do now is make the measurement for that bottom strip. So put the bottom one into place like that, and just bring in your small rule and take a measurement for that bottom pane, and that is actually about 19.5, so it's a little bit shorter than I thought it would be. That's all right. You can just trim your final strip to length, and because I've already cut this, I'm going to use my craft knife to do that. So I'm just going to slice that end off. And just make sure that you've sort of done a straight cut there. Let's just try that in, make sure I've got a nice fit there. Yep. And you can put that one in. Look at that. bottom one. And as you sort of go along adding bits, it's becoming more sturdy, more solid. Okay, so put a little bit of glue then onto each of these ends, and then we can push that final side into place and give it all a good old press. Press together. I think I'm getting more glue on my cutting mat than the wood. So bring this piece in. Oops. Press it all together. I think I've got a slightly shorter strip at the bottom there, so it's pulling that out. That's okay, I can just give it a good squeeze. So just press and hold for a moment, and I'm just going to do that before I try and move it along my work surface so that it doesn't come apart. So give it all a good firm press. Press it down against your work surface as well. Don't worry if you've got any little overhanging edges. I've got one down here because we can trim those off once it's completely dry. And then just really carefully slide it along your work surface, and I'm going to put it in that nice sunny patch over there. Leave that to dry, and we can sand those pencil marks off once it's dry, and then you can make the other frame in the same way. So once your glue has completely dried, you can sand these on all edges. I had a little bit overhanging down here which I actually snipped off with my craft knife, so go round and trim if you need to. And then actually sand them face down on your sandpaper as well. And that way all of these little bits will be all nice and flush at the front. And then I used a little bit of sandpaper to get in and really remove those pencil marks as well. So these are now ready for paint, and I'm going to be using this toucan, which is this lovely sort of sea green. I think that will look really nice. So I've applied one rather thick coat of paint to each of these, and they're now drying, and I now want to have a go at making a basket to store some packs of bedding in. So I've given the measurements for the basket in the cut-in list below, and I've actually measured this to fit underneath the little unit that will be going beside the shelf unit there, and which will sit here with two little sort of paned doors in it. And I've measured so that this basket will fit just below it. So if you are also planning on sort of doing that little unit beside there, then you can make it this size. But otherwise this is just really just like building a drawer, and you can make it any size you like. So to construct it, begin by applying glue along each edge of the base piece. And I'm going to be covering this one in cord rather than fabric. And you've probably seen me make them like that before as well. So attach the sides, making sure you've got that nice flush edge along the front and back. I'll just grab my spare pieces of strip wood for this bit. Oops. Press those into place like that. Just push that along and let that dry off for a moment. You can then pick that up and apply glue along the front and back. then attach the front and back pieces. Make sure you've got the nice flush lines along the sides. Pull the sides out to meet them if you need to. Front piece. I've got a slightly higher side piece on the right hand side. Not sure how I managed that, but once this is completely dry, I'll sand it all off and that will, top edge will all become flush, so don't worry about that. Press it all together and that can be left to dry. And whilst that's drying, I just wanted to show you these lovely labels that Matt designed for me using Adobe Illustrator. Now, Illustrator is a program that I'm not very familiar with, but I am determined to get him to give me a few lessons on it because it's really good for designing your own logos and labels and things like that. And I'm trying to put my hand behind here so you can see the picture on there is actually one of my beds. Can I move it forward like that? Can you see? That's one of the beds that I've made. And then the Little Harbour Homewares logo there that's in the oval, he's done some of those as well so that I can print them off and use them on boxes and bags and some of the crates that we'll be doing to put underneath the shelves on the ground floor. And then I can actually create those as water slide transfers and use them on crates as well. Now, I know not everybody is going to have Illustrator, but you can sort of do things like this just using either Adobe Photoshop or your Word or Excel programs. You may not be able to do, in fact you may actually be able to do the oval. I think you can do shapes in Excel. I'll have a look anyway and we'll have a play around with that in another episode. But you could do your own little designs like this based on the name of your shop, and I think this is just a really lovely detail. Now, I've done them on this background because I'm going to cut around like this so that the logo is at the top or the label is at the top. I'm going to put a piece of fabric in and then we'll fold the back bit around and then we'll wrap the whole thing in cellophane to make some little bedding packs, and they'll go in the little basket that we're making now. And it's when I'm doing things like this and thinking of things like this that I just get so excited about sort of the possibilities and the things that we can put in the shop. So we've got so many great projects ahead of us. But that basket should be dry by now, so I'm going to sand that and then we can apply the cord. So once the basket has dried, sand that on all edges, and you can just put it on the sandpaper like that and go around in small circular motions. Do that on all sides, like I say, and I've already done mine. And then I'm going to be using dark blue cord at the bottom and cream at the top, and then put in a cream plait around the top edge there. So begin by applying glue around the bottom of the basket. So I'm going about halfway up there. Go around all sides. And then take your cord. I'm just actually going to unravel that. Just unravel it a bit so that it's nice and loose. And then place the end of it in the middle at the back of your crate or basket. Press it down so it's level with the bottom. And this sort of method is tricky to get going, but once you've sort of made a start, you'll whiz round in no time. So press that down, and then keep it firm, but don't pull too tightly, else it will come off. Actually get in and give that a good press. Actually, while I'm there, I'll hold it in place like that with my thumb and then work it round like that. So you're just working around the bottom and then going as close to that first strand as you can, and just keep going round. So keep going round, and then if you start sort of running out of glue, you can just apply a little bit more glue. And don't worry about it being on the cord like that, because it dries clear, and also you can just sort of scrape it off once it's dry. Okay, I didn't want it to be quite half and half. I want it to be more sort of 3/4 navy and then just a little bit of cream at the top. So I'm going to put a few more strands of navy around. So I'm just pressing all of that down, and I'm going to put a bit more glue on. And go around just a little bit more. Okay, and then bring it around to the back. Actually, I was already at the back there, so what I'm going to do is snip it off there, and the back is obviously where we started joining in the cord. Press that down. I need to just put a little bit more glue underneath. Press that down, and then you can start with your next colour. You might want to do sort of more stripes, or you might want to do all one colour, so that's entirely up to you. I just thought I'd do it a little bit different and just do a couple of colours. Let's get a bit of cream unravelled as well. Put that one over there. And I'm just going to put a bit more glue on and go all around the top this time. I really enjoy making these little cord baskets. A little bit more time consuming than the fabric ones, but I think the end result is worth it. And again, I think cord suits that sort of nautical theme as well. Okay, so join again at the back. You can actually butt it up against where you snipped that piece off. I'm going to hold on to it again. Again, work your way around until you get to the top. You can sort of use your nail to push the strands closer together if you find that they're sort of flaring a bit. And have a look around that front edge, make sure it's nice and neat in the important place. I quite like that. I'll get one more strand around there, I think. What I might do is just push them down so I can get one more around. Oops. Really press them together. Put a little bit more glue around as well. I'm doing it all sort of kick-handed again. Around that way. Like that. And then snip it off, and I can't get it onto the back now, I don't think. Oh, I might, yeah, I'll be able to tuck it down there actually. So snip it off, a bit more glue, and you can stick that down. And I just realised that I didn't paint or line the inside of the basket first, which I normally do. So I think what I'll do is just put a little bit of paint around on the inside there. Don't worry about these top edges because we're going to be making a plait. But I'll just find a nice colour to go on the inside there. So if you're going to be making one of these, then it's probably a good idea to paint it first, and then you won't get any paint onto your cord. But I'll just quickly do that now. There, so I've painted the inside of the box a nice navy blue. And then to measure for the plait, just measure around the basket. And I normally go around twice just to make sure you've got enough. So just hold it there like that and then wrap it around twice. Like that, and then you want 3 pieces of that for your plait. Put the 3 strands together and tie a nice tight knot in one end. And then use a nice tight bulldog clip to secure that to your cutting mat. Like that, and then you can plait the pieces together. Keep it nice and tight. And then once you get to the other end, you could tie another nice tight knot like that. To attach the plait to the box, then apply glue around these top edges. Like that. And then start the plait at the back. We're going to be cutting the knot off, so you want to stick it down where the plait begins sort of nice and tight. You know, where it begins to sort of look neat. And then just feed it around the top of the box. So make a nice little rounded corner there. Bring it round. This cord actually sticks really nicely with the wood glue. Feed it round that corner as well. You don't want to pull it too tight at the corners because you don't want it to sort of come off and leave a gap, so make sure you're leaving yourself enough around the corners there. You can then snip off that first knot and quickly sort of glue those ends down before they have a chance to unravel, and then come around this way. I'm just going to put a little bit more glue on there. And sliding off camera there. And then stick that down. And then trim that off where the other one starts and glue that down as well. And press those ends together, get them to sort of blend in. That just finishes it off nicely. So now we're going to make some bedding to actually put in it. So I've made a start. I've done a couple of little bedding sets. I haven't put the cellophane on yet, and I'll just go through my drawer in a moment and see what I've got. But this is the sort of thing. So really simple. So I've cut the labels so that I've got a lot of the coloured background overhanging beneath. Let me tell you how long I left that actually. So I left that 35mm long, that's 1 3/8 of an inch, and the actual label is about 13mm, so just over 1/2 inch. And then when you fold them around like that, your bedding or your fabric is going to be that high. So as I did with the towels in the last episode, I've cut a piece of card and that will sit in there, and see how I've left a border around the outside, and that's just for the thickness of the fabric when I fold it around so that it actually meets the edges of the label. So that's how I'm doing it. I'm just cutting a piece of fabric that's just slightly larger around 2 sides and the top, and then we fold it back and fold the top over and then glue the label around, and then we'll put the cellophane on and actually sellotape that down at the back where it won't be seen. So my camera battery has just started flashing, so I'll change that and then we'll get started. So I'm just sort of cutting a couple of pieces of fabric at a time. I've made myself 15 labels, but I don't know how many is going to fit in the basket, so I'll just do a couple at a time, and I don't want them sort of crammed in so we can't see the labels at all. I want them to sort of be back at an angle like that so we can actually peer in and see the label in there. So I'll just do another couple. So I've just cut a piece of fabric like that so that it'll come round the sides and then fold over at the top. And I'm not worried about having a flap at the bottom because that bit's not going to be seen, it's going to be hidden behind the label. So just apply glue along one long edge to start with. Fold that over. And then turn round and apply it along the other long edge. My glue's going a bit claggy. I'll see what I've got, what I can use out of that, and then put a bit more on my card. And it was okay, and then I had one of those annoying phone calls about doing a household survey, which I always refuse. I just say, you know, I don't wish to answer any questions. If you say it often enough, they'll finally hang up. And then the battery in the camera started going. In the meantime, the glue started drying out. So then put a bit on that top flap like that. Pull that over. And then apply it to the label. Apply glue to the label. See if I got enough to do that. Yeah, plenty there. Oh! And then sit the little bedding set in like that. Pull the label up. So I'll do another few and then we'll find that cellophane out. So I ended up doing 8 little bedding sets, so 4 each side, and that leaves a nice gap at the front so we can actually see the label on there. And then to wrap them in cellophane, we angle that into the light, you can see that that's wrapped there. I've just used the packet of file dividers, so a really nice thin cellophane, and then you just cut a square which you wrap round the same as we did with the fabric really, and then sellotape that at the back so it looks really messy at the back there. But I find that sellotape is really the only thing that works with cellophane. You can't really find a glue that will glue it down. Well, I'm sure you can find some sort of specialist glue, but it's very messy and a lot of work as well. I think I've used that sort of 2-part resin to glue plastic and cellophane before, and it really is a lot of mess and it smells as well. So it's easy just to use sellotape when you're not going to see where you're sort of joining it. So just put your little set face down on it, pull in the sides, like that, pull nice and tight. And then pull off a small piece of sellotape, stick that down, trim that off a little bit so it's not overhanging at the front, and then I actually cut the top and bottom in at an angle so that you're not going to see anything sort of overhanging at the sides. Just cut that off like that, and then pull those bits in, and then take another very tiny little bit of tape and glue those down as well. The tape actually on, if you're using a dispenser or an inch wide tape, might be a little bit too wide, so you might have to keep trimming it as I do, but just try and pull off the smallest bit that you can, and then just trim it so there's nothing overhanging at the front. And it does look awfully messy at the back, but like I say, as that's not going to be seen, that doesn't matter too much. Like that. I think they look really good. So I'll do the rest of these. So there's the little basket of bedding sets, and I'm really pleased with those. Again, really simple, but makes for a lovely little detail. And in the end, I cut a row of tape, small pieces of sellotape, which I stuck along the edge of my cutting mat, and that makes the whole process so much easier. Just pulling the little bits of tape off the edge of your cutting mat rather than having to keep trimming them as you go along. And this is going to sit under that little unit beside our large shelf unit there, so that will go in there. And now I want to get back to the little frames, which are now dry, so I'll give those a sand and then we can attach the mesh. So I just sanded those off using a piece of 500 grade sandpaper, and then used my soft brush to get rid of the dust. And I now want to cut some mesh to go behind the frames. And this is a mesh that's used for sculptures. So you'd use it as sort of the basis of the sculpture. But it's really great for miniature work, and you can get this from places like eBay and Amazon. And this has got a little 3mm 1/8 of an inch wide diamond on it, but you can get it in different sizes. This is a sort of medium grade as well, but you can get finer ones and heavier ones. So just have a search around for sort of craft mesh or sculpture in mesh or something like that. And it can easily be cut with scissors as well. So just line up your door so that at the back you've just got a little bit overlapping around the frame so that we can actually glue it into place. And then if your mesh is straight, you can just cut along the centre of a diamond like that. There again, and then find your other cut along there this time. So cut your two pieces and just follow the line up there, I think. And then we're actually going to need super glue to stick these into place. And I've just realised that mine's really dried up and gone hard, so I'm going to go and see if Matt's got any that I can borrow. So I've got this spray glue or spray adhesive, and I forgot actually we had this. We bought it to reupholster a chair, and we used it to attach the braid around the base of the chair, but it does also actually work on metals. Now it's got a really strong smell, so you need to work in a well ventilated room, so I'm going to open my window before I spray this. And obviously because I'm working on a small area, I'm just going to spray a small amount into the lid and then apply it from there. So let me get the window open. I'll open my door as well, actually. Let the air circulate a bit. So I'll start by giving it a good shake. Okay, so let's spray some in there. I'm going to lean right back because I don't want it spraying up into my face. Ooh. Should be enough. And then I'm going to apply it with a cocktail stick. So I just went and washed my hands because I did actually get it on my finger, but that washed off really easily, not like super glue that sort of dries almost hard, doesn't it? So turn the frame face down if you've got a sort of front and back. And let's just try scoop a bit of this up with the cocktail stick. Then just apply a little bit around the outside edges of the frame. And this glue really has got a strong smell, so like I say, important you get plenty of fresh air into the room. Spreading out quite nicely. I don't know how long the sort of take time is, so hopefully this isn't going to dry before I've sort of applied it around all the edges. I think I need to put a few more squirts into the pot, just because it's not liquid, it just sort of turns into a bit of a, you know, a coating. So I'll spray a little bit more in. So I've got quite a bit in there now, so it is actually liquid and moving about, so let's get that on quite quickly. It's quite frothy as well when you first sprayed it. I'm sure you've all sort of used spray glues and things. There, that's better. I'll get that on there more quickly now. And I'm just going to put it around the outside. There's no need really to go onto all those sort of inner frames. So I'm trying not to touch the frame now as well. A bit more up there, it started to dry a little bit. And then I'm just going to lay that mesh on without again sort of touching that glue. Press it down to sort of get it to take. I might need to weigh this down with something. I'm just going to use a couple of cocktail sticks here to really sort of press that against the glue. Yeah, that works. So as soon as you sort of press it down, it does start to take. So give it a good press without keeping the cocktail sticks there for too long. I'm sort of rolling that into place there. But I can see it taking now. The mesh is sort of starting to lay flat against the surface of the frame. Let's see, while I'm holding that into place, if I can just have a look at the tin and see how long it says. Fast rate of tack development. Let's see. It doesn't actually tell you the drying times on there, it just sort of tells you how to use it. No, so it doesn't actually say a drying time on there, so we'll probably just leave these to one side for a little while I get on with another project, and then we'll come back and finish them off. But I think what I am going to do is I'm going to find a tin or something plastic to actually put on top of there and hold that into place. Yeah, I'm going to stand a couple of tins of wood dye on top of there and get those to sit on there, just so that that dries on there flat. And now I'll apply the mesh to the other frame. So the glue has been drying now for a couple of hours and it's still just a little bit tacky, but it's dry enough that I can carry on and make some bunting to go across each of the frames. So I'm going to be using this strip wood, and I'll have a different colour for each little triangle, but I'm going to start by cutting it into strips so that I can then mark up my triangle on the back and cut it out. And how we're actually going to do it is to make some diamonds, and then we'll fold them in half over our piece of string. And I just want 3 sort of pieces of bunting for each frame. So on the back of one of your strips or your piece of card, whatever you're using, begin by marking out a rectangle, so 10mm or 3/8 of an inch by 30mm, which is 1 3/16. Join that up like that. So cut that out. You then want to fold that in half. Make a nice sharp line along there. And then make a little pencil mark in the centre of the folded end, like that. And then you want to cut from that pencil mark to the corner along the fold. Like that. And again from that corner to the pencil mark. Like that. And there's our first little piece of bunting. And then you can either mark that up again, or you could actually even use this as a template and just copy around that and onto your next piece of card. And I'm going to make, like I say, 3 for each frame. And I've just chosen some colours that go nicely with that paint. So once you've cut the bunting, you can cut a piece of string that's just slightly longer than the width of your frame, probably about 3 inches there. Cut a couple of pieces to that length. And take the first piece, fold it in half just so we know where to position the central piece of bunting. And then put that piece of bunting on like that, and then just put a bit of glue in the middle. A bit much there, I think. And glue that down, keeping that string on the inside there. And then you just want to put the next ones just a couple of millimetres away, because we want them obviously to fit across the width of the frame. So do the same thing again. Actually put a little bit of glue along the crease there, and then put that string into place. And just put a little bit on the back as well. Glue that down. Final one there. Like that. We can then glue that into place across the sort of top section of the frame. And you can actually glue the bunting to the frame there. So put a bit of glue on the central one. Like that. Glue that down. And then I'll put a little bit of glue at each corner like that. Glue those down. Of course, you don't have to have this along the top, you can have it going across the centre if you like. I'm just going to glue that string sort of around onto the back if I can. Just put a little bit of glue along there, and then I'll snip it off. Just bring it around like that. So my bunting is glued into place, and I've just been through that lovely tin of shells that Jill sent, and I've picked out 5 small ones, and I'm going to try and use tacky wax to actually attach them to the mesh, just because they're obviously a funny shape and that we're attaching them to mesh. So I hope this will work. If not, we'll have to think again. I'm just going to put a bit on the back, and obviously it doesn't matter if it looks messy from around the back, as long as it looks nice from the front. And spread that onto there like that, and be really careful when you're working with shells because they're so fragile. Put that in there like that. You don't want to press them down too hard as they're likely just to crack. That seems to be sticking quite nicely, so that's good. And this lovely pointed shell here, don't know what they're called, probably a cone shell, something like that. I don't know, I think I might just be making that up actually. I know those ones are called conches, conch shells. I'll put another little bit on here. And I like to apply the tacky wax with a cocktail stick. I find if you sort of scrape it up with your nail, it can really make your nail painful and get stuck behind the nail. I'm just going to scrape off the excess on that one. I don't like tacky wax to be seen from behind things. Yep, that seems to be holding them really well. And I think the colours of these shells go really nicely as well with the paint and the card that I've used for the bunting. Yes, I'm really glad that worked because I wasn't sure what else I was going to try. I think that looks really good. So I'll do the other one and then we can get them into place. So there are the completed frames, and I think they look really good. Now I haven't glued them into place because it may be that I move them from there or have perhaps just one up there and one somewhere else. As we make sort of more bits and pieces, I'll have a clearer idea of where things should go and where they're going to look nicest. But I think they look really good. For a sort of really simple make, I think they look really effective. And I love those little shells. So that's it for today, and I really hope you've enjoyed this episode. The shop is slowly but surely starting to fill up, and I can't wait to get started on the next lot of projects. So for now, take care, stay safe, and I'll see you for episode 14. Bye!